Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new to watching my videos, my name is Crystal. Thank you so much for being here in my little corner of YouTube. I hope you have so much fun while you're here. I post all book content here on my YouTube channel, reading vlogs, book reviews, book favorites, all of the things. So if you are a fellow reader, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. I'm very excited about today's video because I'm doing the end of year book tag. I'm sure y'all knew that. You clicked on the video. I've seen all of my favorite booktubers doing this tag and I had to join in. I had to be a part of it. I have loved watching these videos so much and I just wanted to partake because I think that the questions are so fun. So we're just gonna jump right in. I have a list, I think of, is it 20 questions? 22 questions, and they're all bookish questions related to the books that I read in 2023. One of my main goals with these questions is to try and not repeat books. I think there are a couple of questions where I will have to repeat a book or two, maybe, but I'm gonna try my hardest not to talk about the same books more than once. So we will see how good I do. Okay, the first question is the most disappointing read of the year. I actually have two. I have two books that I want to talk about for this one. We're starting off strong with Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This book was my most anticipated read of 2023. I was the most excited to read this because Fourth Wing, which is the first book in this series. I think there's gonna be 5 books in this series, but Fourth Wing is one of my favorite reads of the year. So I was very, very much anticipating this and it let me down. It just let me down. Fourth Wing was so fun and full of adventure and so much personality from the characters. The romance was so great, like the angst and the buildup and their relationships, the character development. I was expecting the same type of vibe in this book. This book was just not fun for me at all. It honestly felt like a chore. It was one of those things where I just did not want to pick this book up. I wasn't looking forward to reading it. And so it took me a while to get through. To me, this was just a big info dump. Like, there were some really good action scenes. There was some good scenes in this book. I didn't absolutely hate it. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars. I feel like that's generous though. Honestly, this book was probably like a 2.5 star for me. Like, there were some good scenes, but then it would just go back to being a big info dump and it just hurt my brain to read this. And I just was very disappointed. I will be reading the 3rd book, but if the 3rd book is anything like this, I might give up on the series. The next book I want to talk about that was a disappointment for me this year was Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. Oh, y'all, I had such high hopes for this book because Every Summer After is one of my favorite books of all time. So when this came out, I was just very excited because I love Carly Fortune's writing. I think her writing is just beautiful. And she has this way of making you feel very connected to the characters, at least Every Summer After she did. I didn't get that same thing in this book. I just didn't feel the connection between the 2 main characters. I didn't really care very much. And I think that's because I didn't really feel connected to them. Honestly, this book was like kind of boring. It just didn't really do much for me at all. It was just a very middle of the line read. I think I gave this book 3 stars. I really liked the setting and the writing, but that's really all that I liked. I just didn't really connect with the characters and I didn't really like the storyline either. So yeah, unfortunately, this was a disappointment for me, but I know that she's coming out with a new book in 2024 and I will absolutely be reading that book and I'm hoping it's as good as Every Summer After. Okay, the next question is the underdog book of the year. That is an easy answer. The Girls in the Cabin by Caleb Stevens. If you have watched any of my recent videos or you follow me over on my Bookstagram, you know that I do not shut up about this book, and that is for good reason. This is one of my favorite thrillers ever. Caleb Stevens is an independent author, so his books aren't super popular. They're not very well known, and I want to make this book well known because it deserves all of the hype. This book is about Chris and his 2 daughters. They go out on this camping trip in the middle of the woods. One of them ends up getting injured and they're basically out looking for shelter or looking for some kind of help. They end up finding this random, like, creepy cabin in the middle of the woods and they think that they have found help and they're so relieved. But what they find inside this cabin and the things that start happening from there are just wild. They're just wild. This book is full of twists and turns. It has an incredible atmosphere. It's like dark and snowy and cold. Obviously, a cabin in the middle of the woods. It's just everything that I would want in a thriller. The writing is amazing. I felt so connected to the characters. I loved this book so much, and this is absolutely an underdog book that deserves so much more hype. And then speaking of hype, the next question is a book that was overhyped that you read in 2023. That's another easy one. And if you know me, you know what I'm gonna say. That is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Y'all, this is probably my least favorite book that I've ever read, not only in 2023, but like ever. I just did not like this. This book was not for me. I know so many people love this. It won so many awards. I went into this thinking that I was also going to be a part of the bandwagon that absolutely loves this book, but I was not. I just didn't like anything about it. I didn't like the storyline. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the writing. I didn't like the themes and topics that are talked about in this book. There really wasn't anything about it that I enjoyed. I honestly would have DNF'd this book if it wasn't for us reading this in my book club, but I ended up pushing through and finishing it, and DNFing would have been the right choice for me. And if you are one of the people that love this, I love that for you. That is totally okay that we don't agree on books. That's the fun and that's the joy of reading, is that not everyone has the same opinions. I mean, I guess I could see why people would love this because it is very different and unique. It just wasn't for me. Next question is your favorite book couple or couples of the year. This is really hard, but I narrowed it down to like 4 books that I want to talk about. The first one I want to talk about is Ari and Noah from Say You Swear. Oh my gosh, I love everything about them. I love them together. Noah specifically, I'm just like, oh, Noah. He is so sweet and thoughtful and just like, he is just there for her. He has my heart. Like, I love that man, but I love their relationship. They have this bond that I could just literally feel through the pages. Oh yes, this couple right here, Griffin and Winslow. This is one of my favorite couples of the entire year, like hands down. This is actually one of my favorite books of the entire year. Griffin reminds me of Rip from Yellowstone. I mean, need I say more? He's like this, he's just like a man's man. He is rough, he is rugged, he's broody, but he has this soft spot. I also really loved Winslow as well. She is a very strong female character, and together they're unstoppable. Okay, then we have Piper and Brendan from It Happened One Summer. This right here is like a prime example of opposites attract, because Brendan is like this rugged fisherman in this small little town, and Piper is like a big time influencer in a big city. They bump heads, but then they just work. Their chemistry was insane, off the charts, opposites attract. I love them so much. Oh gosh. And then we have Archer and Bree from Archer's Voice. They just have the sweetest, most wholesome relationship. I love their love. I loved reading about their love. Their love was intense, but also it was so pure and sweet at the same time. This is the kind of couple where they meet and they immediately have chemistry, but they are also fighting their own internal battles within themselves. They're both going through things in their own life, and they have to sort of work through that and learn how to love themselves before they can love someone else. It's like that type of situation, but their love like conquers all. I love them too, both as characters, but together they're even better. Okay, the next question is your favorite main characters of the year. I have a few for this one too. First off, I am going to start with a series, and that is none other than the Miles High Club series by T.L. Swan. The brothers in this series, I just am in love with all of them, and I haven't stopped thinking about them since reading this series at the beginning of the year. I read this series in February. I binged it. This is one of those series that you just will not be able to put down. They're so addicting because they are just so fun, and you will have a blast reading these books. They are just so entertaining. Each book is about a different brother. They're very similar in a lot of ways, but they're also very different in a lot of ways as well. They have their own personalities. They're all funny. I just fell really hard for them while I was reading. Like, I feel like I know them in real life. If you have not read this series and you like spicy books, the spice in these books is high, okay? But these books are a blast. They are the most entertaining books I think I've ever read. And this series has my heart. I love it so much, and these brothers have my heart. Okay, next up, the Mindfuck series. The main female character in this book, Lana, she is a badass. I've never rooted for a character so much reading a book. The things that she goes through in her life, like she's been through some very, very, very traumatic things. This book is basically about her revenge. While I was reading this, I was like screaming for her, like, yes, like you go girl. But her growth and the strength that she draws from her life experiences, she was just such a great character and I really loved her. Okay, next up, I have to talk about Fourth Wing. This is one of my favorite books of the year. Xaden. Not only Xaden, but literally all the characters in this book I really loved. The dragons, y'all, the dragons in this book, they are funny. They have their own little like quirky personalities. Their banter is so good. Xaden is like just this powerful warrior, you know? I really liked Violet in this book as well. I didn't really like her as much in Iron Flame, but in this book, she was so great. Her character growth in this one is really, really good because at the beginning of this book, she's a little bit more frail and she's not very strong, doesn't really have a lot of confidence. And then as the book goes on, you just see her growth so much. And by the end of this book, she is just a very, very strong character. So I really liked Violet in this book. I loved Xaden, obviously, and the dragons were just amazing. All right, next up, I have to talk about One Last Rainy Day by Kate Stewart. The main character in this book is Dom. And this is actually a spin-off of the Ravenhood series. This is the Ravenhood series right here. You have Flock, Exodus, and The Finish Line. I didn't read this in 2023, but this is one of my favorite series of all time. And one of the main characters in this series gets a spin-off book, which is One Last Rainy Day. And this one I did read in 2023. But this one is told from the perspective of Dom, who, like I said, is one of the main characters in the Ravenhood series, but you don't get his point of view until this book. I'm still trying to recover. This like took my heart and just shattered it into a million little pieces. I absolutely love Dom. He is one of my favorite characters in a series, in a book, in anything. I feel very connected to him, especially after reading this book. I felt connected to him after the Ravenhood series, but after this one, I like really just like, he's like a part of me. He's just a part of me now. Now you do have to read these in order. So you do have to start with Flock and then you read Exodus, then The Finish Line, and then you'll read One Last Rainy Day. This is a dark romance series. If you think of like kind of like Fast and the Furious mixed with Sons of Anarchy, it has that type of vibe, but you also mix in a lot of spice. But this is one of my favorite series ever, and I always recommend it to people who like the dark romance genre. Okay, and then last but certainly not least, I cannot talk about my favorite characters of 2023 without talking about the Throne of Glass series. I read the entire series this year, and the characters in these books, they're just like a family, and that's really the only way to describe it. I think that Sarah J. Maas has such an amazing way of forming connections and relationships with her characters to where you feel like you literally know them, like you feel like you're friends with them. I would say that Selena is probably one of my favorite female main characters of all time. Rowan, oh my God, I miss him. Manon, which I'm not sure if you pronounce it Manon or Manon, but I say Manon. She's one of the main characters in the later books in this series. She's incredible. Like, her character is unlike any other character that I've ever read about. This series probably has some of the best female characters in any other books that I've read. Oh yeah, I would just say all of the characters in Throne of Glass. They're all amazing. Oh my God, y'all, this is gonna be a long video, let me tell you. I'm only on question 6 and there's 22 questions. Question 6 is a book that surprised you. And I'm gonna go with Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. The reason why this book surprised me is because I didn't really like it. I went into this book thinking this was gonna be a 5-star read for me. I'd heard so many incredible things. Everyone raves about this book. Like, this is one of Alice Feeney's most popular books. Everyone loves it. And it's Alice Feeney. I love her writing. This one just didn't hit for me. I went into this thinking that this was a thriller because it is technically labeled a thriller. But to me, this book is more about the couple's marriage and the struggles that they're going through in their marriage. And then of course there's a twist as well. I don't know, I didn't find this book thrilling in the least. This book did not thrill me at all. It was actually kind of slow. And I don't like reading thrillers that are slow. Like, if I'm reading a thriller, I want it to be fast paced. I want it to be a page turner. And this to me was not that. Now, I did like the setting in this book because it's set like in this little house in the middle of like a snowstorm, which was really cool. But I don't know, this just one wasn't for me. And it definitely surprised me because I thought that this was going to be like a 5-star read for me. Okay, next question is a new favorite author that you discovered in 2023. That is easy. That is going to be H.D. Carlton. I will read anything that this woman writes. Anything. Does It Hurt is the first H.D. Carlton book that I read, and I just devoured this book. I absolutely loved it. And then I also, towards the end of the year, read the Cat and Mouse duet, which I'm going to be talking about here in just a little bit. They were all 5-star reads for me. I love her writing so much. She does write dark romance, so keep that in mind. She is a dark romance writer, so her books are not for the faint of heart, and they are very spicy. It's not the same kind of spice that you would get in like Archer's Voice, for example, because this does have some spice in it, or like It Happened One Summer. The spice in her books is very different. It's almost like taboo kind of spice. I would consider it dark spice. Hands down, she is like one of my new favorite authors. Okay, the next question is the happiest read of the year. And I actually have 2 books for this that I want to talk about. The first one is Love Light Farms by B.K. Borison. I actually just finished reading this at the beginning of December. This book is my new comfort read. This book is just like a warm hug, a warm Christmas hug. This made me feel all kinds of warm and fuzzy and happy. I loved everything about this book. The romance in this book is so incredibly sweet and heartwarming and wholesome. The setting, it's set at a Christmas tree farm, and on this Christmas tree farm, there's little cabins that they live in, and there's like a little coffee shop, and they drink hazelnut lattes, and there's Christmas lights everywhere, and it's just the coziest, happiest book I've ever read. And then another happy book is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I was laughing out loud reading this book. It was so funny, but also deep and meaningful at the same time. I think that Abby Jimenez does a really great job of weaving in serious life topics, but also keeping it somewhat lighthearted as well. You can really relate to the topics that they talk about in her books, but they're also funny and lighthearted and sweet and cozy. I felt all kinds of happy reading this book. I laughed out loud so many times. I loved the characters. I loved the setting. The storyline was so good. On the front here, it says, Abby Jimenez's words sprinkle humor and warmth all over my life. And that, I could not have said it better. I would also say that she's probably another author that I discovered this year that I really love. And if she comes out with new books, I will read all of them. Okay, next question is most frustrating book you read in 2023. That one is very easy, and I'm gonna have to repeat myself on this one. So this is the first question that I am bringing in a book that I've already talked about. It's gonna be Iron Flame. I really can't think of any other books I've read this year that I was actually like frustrated reading them, except for this one. This one I can genuinely say that I was so frustrated reading this book. The politics, the world building, the history, the talk about the borders, and the detailed war lingo. Now, I understand it's a fantasy. There's gonna be those elements in a high fantasy book. I get that. This was just an overload of it. It was just too much. It was too much. And I felt like it would never end. Like it would go on for so many pages, and I'm like, okay, can we get back to the freaking like storyline? Can we get back to the dialogue between the characters and the relationships between the characters and the fantasy and the fun dragons and the action scenes? Like, can we get back to that? No, it's just all info dump. Here you go. I swear 80% of this book was just me reading about the history of borders and the history of their continent and the politics and the world building. It was so frustrating. When this book was over, I was so relieved, y'all. I was so relieved to be done with this. Needless to say, this is hands down the most frustrating book of 2023, if not ever. Next question is best adaptation of the year. Daisy Jones and the Six, hands down. I didn't read this book in 2023, but the show did come out in 2023. Watched the show this year, and the show is absolutely incredible. I will say, I am one of the very few people that did not like the book. I feel like it's really hard to portray what they're trying to portray in a book. Like this story is all about the music, and it's all about their journey through becoming rock stars. The show, you can hear the music, you can see them playing, you can see them on stage, you can see their chemistry on the stage. I didn't feel that in the book, but the show was just amazing. The soundtrack, like Jacob and I both watched the show and we could not stop listening to that soundtrack for like weeks and weeks after we finished the show. I just felt very, very connected to the show, and I feel like they did an incredible job transforming this book onto the screen. The next question is the shortest book that you read this year. Okay, the shortest book I read was Satan's Affair by H.D. Carlton. This is a little prequel novella that comes before the cat and mouse duet. This right here is the cat and mouse duet. You have Haunting Adeline and Hunting Adeline. And so Satan's Affair is the book that you read before you read this duet. There are 144 pages in this book. So very, very short little novella, but I will stand by this and say that you absolutely need to read this before you read the cat and mouse duet. Now, if you've already read the cat and mouse duet, I think that's totally fine. I still think you should go back and read this little novella. But if you haven't read this duet yet and you plan to, I'm telling you, please, please read this first, because there is a character in this book that makes an appearance in the other books. Your character will just mean more if you have read Satan's Affair. Anyway, this was a 5-star read for me. This book is absolutely insane. It is insane. This is not for the faint of heart. I'm telling you right now, not for the faint of heart. Things that I read in this book, I literally had to put the book down and like take a breather. And that is saying a lot for me, because there is not a lot that affects me like that, especially in books. I don't get affected that easily. The spice in this is some of the most taboo spice that I have ever read in my entire life. This book is insane, but I loved every second. I don't know what that says about me that I loved this, but I did. Okay, the next question is the longest book that you have read this year. And that is gonna be Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. I think this has like close to 1,000 pages. This is a beast of a book, okay? Look at this. 980 pages, so might as well be 1,000. Oh my God, I'm getting sucked into this again. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, this is the last book in the Throne of Glass series. It is just the perfect ending to this series. It wraps everything up in a pretty little bow, and so much happens in this book. You are taken through just like an epic adventure. It's a masterpiece. It really is a masterpiece. That's all I have to say. Okay, next question is favorite cover of the year. This is gonna be the most random answer. Y'all are gonna be like, what? That cover out of all of them? But I don't know what it is. Well, I do know. I just love this cover. I love everything about it. How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I don't know. It creeps me out. Like, this cover is very creepy, and I just love how simple it is, but it's still effective. You know, I just love all things creepy and spooky. And so when I see a cover with a random, like, just creepy house on the front of it, I'm like, I'm sold. Like, the same thing goes for The Girls in the Cabin. I love this cover too. Like, look at that. And it's just like a creepy house with someone sitting in the window in the middle of the woods. Okay, next question is a book that you haven't stopped thinking about. It's gonna be The Cat and Mouse Duet by H.D. Carlton. I know I already talked about Satan's Affair, but yeah, this whole series in general, haven't stopped thinking about it. I've thought about it every single day since I finished it. I don't think I've ever been so affected, like physically affected by books before. In short, if you have no idea what these books are about, basically there's a stalker. He becomes obsessed with a girl, Adeline, and he basically stalks her and they fall in love. That's all I will say. There's obviously some other plots that go throughout this storyline, but I don't want to talk about them because I don't want to ruin this series for those of you who have not read it. This series is dark, probably some of the darkest books that you will ever read. There are some very, very, very heavy, triggering topics in these books, so just know that going in. There are also some pretty graphic scenes, but this is one of my favorite series of all time. Again, I don't really know what that says about me, but with this series, you just need to take your morals and throw them out the window and then go in to start reading these. You got to throw your morals out the window before you read this series. Next question is the cringiest book that you have read this year. This one is also easy. It's gonna be Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score. The amount of corny pet names that are thrown around in this book, I could not handle it. I couldn't handle it. She calls him Hot Shot. Hey, Hot Shot. He calls her Lena Bobina. Lena Bobina. She says, Nash, that ass, Morgan. That ass. D-A-T, ass. That ass. She literally says that in this book. He calls her Angel. Hey, Angel. Oh, sweet Angel. Oh, Angel. The Angel this, Angel that. I'm like, oh my, just make it stop. Please make it stop. I had secondhand embarrassment while I was reading this book. Like, it's one of those things where I was like, oh my God. It was so cringe. I couldn't handle it. Listen, I really liked Things We Never Got Over. That's the first book in the Knock 'Em Out series. But this book made me stop reading the series altogether. Like, I won't even read the third book because this book really turned me off from the whole entire Knock 'Em Out series. I did not like this book at all. Okay, next question is an unpopular book that you loved. And that is going to be Missing Child by Patricia McDonald. I don't think I've ever heard anyone talking about this book, but one of my really good friends read it earlier this year, and she was like, you have to read this book. And I had never heard of it, but I saw how short it was too. I think this book is only, it's 215 pages. So I was like, oh, I can read that pretty quickly. So I'm just gonna read it as sort of like a palate cleanser in between my fantasy books, because I was reading Throne of Glass when I read this. And I really, really enjoyed this book. I think I gave it 4 stars, but this book is basically about a missing child. A child goes missing, and the family is trying to obviously like find him, and they're doing a search for him, uncover some really dark secrets that are going on within the family. And the mystery kind of unravels from there. There's a lot of twists, a lot of turns. It's a very fast-paced page turner. I would say this is a really good like whodunit type of mystery. So if you like books like that, I would highly recommend this one. I don't hear anyone talking about this, but I thought it was really, really good. Okay, next question is, what was the highest and lowest rated books that you read this year on Goodreads? And do you agree with the rating? The highest rated book is Kingdom of Ash, surprise, surprise, at a 4.66 on Goodreads. And do I agree with that rating? Obviously, yes, I agree with that rating. This is just an epic ending to an amazing series, and it absolutely deserves to have that high of a rating in Goodreads. It's incredible. The whole series is incredible. And you know what's funny is that after I read Throne of Glass, I was like, okay, I was kind of relieved that it was over, because it is such a long series and it is such a commitment. The books are thick, and it's just a lot. It took a lot out of me. So when I was done reading it, I was like, oh, I'm relieved that that's over. But now that it's been a few months since I've read the entire series, I actually like miss it. And I realize how good of a series it is. I think it was one of those things where I needed to sit on it and let it simmer for a little bit. I knew that it was good while I was reading it, and obviously like such an amazing series, but I didn't realize how good it was until now. I'm looking back and I'm like, man, that was really, really good. I like just miss the characters, and I miss the world. Anyway, Kingdom of Ash absolutely deserves the hype that it gets. The whole Throne of Glass series is amazing. If you haven't read it, you absolutely need to read A Court of Thorns and Roses series first, then read Throne of Glass, and then dive into Crescent City. That's the order that I would recommend. Okay, and then the lowest rated book that I read was Horror Hotel by Victoria Fulton and Faith McLaren. In Goodreads, the rating is at a 3.3. And yes, I would have to agree with that rating. I didn't hate this book at all. I actually quite enjoyed it. But the writing is not very good. It's a very high level, very young adult type of writing. This is probably one of those books that I could have read like in middle school. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of writing. It's very adolescent type of writing. That's the only way for me to describe it. But I did enjoy the storyline. This was just like a fun, fast read for me. Took no brain power at all. But this is about a group of YouTubers. They have a paranormal YouTube channel. I love watching paranormal YouTube channels. So right there, I was like immediately hooked. And they end up going to this haunted hotel to do an investigation. And I love anything paranormal. So for me, this storyline was really cool and unique, and it just was very fitting for me. Also, this storyline is loosely based on the Elisa Lam case. If you are into the true crime world, you've probably heard of the Elisa Lam case. It's one of the cases that still intrigues me to this day. And so with all of that mixed together, the paranormal YouTube channel, the haunted hotel, and then the little nod to the Elisa Lam case, I just ate this up. So I really did enjoy it, but the writing is not very good and it's very surface level, but I still had a good time, so. Okay, the next question is favorite quotes of the year. This is so hard because there's so many amazing quotes that I read in books this year, but there are a couple that stand out to me, so I'm gonna just go through a couple of them. But the first one I can think of is in Twisted Games by Anna Wong. This is about a princess and her bodyguard. On page 239, Bridget von Ascherberg was mine and mine alone. It didn't matter that she wasn't mine to take. I was taking her anyway. And if I could tattoo myself onto her skin, bury myself in her heart, and etch myself onto her soul, I would. What? Ugh. And then another quote, I mean, there are so many from this book, Divine Rivals. There's one that just like, Woo, it got me. It's odd how quickly life can change, isn't it? How one little thing like typing a letter can open a door you never saw, a transcendent connection, a divine threshold. But if there's anything I should say in this moment, when my heart is beating wildly in my chest and I would beg you to come and tame it, is this. Your letters have been a light for me to follow. Your words, a sublime feast that fed me on days when I was starving. A sublime feast that fed me on days when I was starving. I can't handle it. Okay, the next question is book with the most unique concept. The first book that came to my mind is this one. It's called Feeders by Caleb Stevens. This is the same author of The Girls in the Cabin, which is that book that I talked about earlier in the video. This was such a just cool and different type of read. I would consider this, I guess I would consider this an apocalyptic horror. This book is about these creatures, like roach-like type of creatures, which are right here on the cover of this book. But they are coming out from underneath the ground and they're basically feeding on all of the humans. Their goal is to pretty much take out and kill all of mankind. And so this story takes you through a group of people who are trying to survive through that. And they're trying to get to this shelter. So they're taking a road trip to get to this shelter because it's kind of far away. And obviously along the way, they are trying to avoid being eaten and attacked by these feeders. It was just such a cool concept of a book and very different than anything I've ever read. And I loved it. This was another 5-star read for me. All right, we've only got a few questions to go. The next question is a book that you would reread. And oh my gosh, there are a lot of books that I want to reread, but the one that comes to my mind first is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I know I read a couple of quotes from this. I would consider this a historical fantasy with romance. I felt like I was on the set of a 1920s movie while I was reading this book because it is set in the early 1900s. These two writers basically form a magical connection, writing letters through a magical typewriter. If a book were a thing, I would say that this book is like a big mug of hot tea on a cold winter day. Like that is what this book is. The love story in this is also so heartwarming and pure and sweet and gentle. There is also a big cliffhanger at the end, and the second book comes out this month. So I will probably be reading that in January, and I cannot wait because the writing is absolutely beautiful. It is poetic. It is lyrical. I would consider this a new comfort read for me. Okay, the next question is reading goal reflection and 2024 reading goal. So my goal for 2023 was 55 books and I have read 62. So I'm glad I ended up meeting my reading goal for the year. I read so many amazing books this year. I have found some of my favorite books of all time, some of my favorite series of all time that I haven't stopped thinking about, and just they'll be with me forever. And I feel like I had a really good reading year. Now in 2024, I don't know what I want my exact number to be. I don't know, maybe I'll keep it the same at 55 because I do have to split my reading time between obviously like my work, like I have a full-time job, and then also shows because Jacob and I love watching series and we love watching movies. And so I have to split my reading time between all of that. So I think I'm gonna give myself the same goal this year of 55 books. And I feel like that was a really good number for me. And then the very last question in this video is, after 2023 reading, what are you prioritizing in 2024 reading wise? For me in 2024, I am prioritizing some series. I think there are like 6 or 7 full series that I have not touched. I'm not going to share what those series are quite yet because I'm going to be doing a whole entire video on the series that I want to get through in 2024 that I actually have in my hands, like on my bookshelf right now that are staring at me to read them. So that is one of my main goals in 2024. I also would like to prioritize not buying as many books as I have been this year, but a lot of them I haven't even read yet. And so I really want to get through a lot of the books that I currently have and own before I start buying a ton more. Now, I will be buying books periodically here and there because of my book club and obviously like new releases that come out that that I want to read and do like a reading vlog or something or do a review for. So I will be buying books, periodically throughout the year, but I want to chill on buying like whole entire series without reading the ones that I have first. So that is really my main goal in 2024. I have a feeling it's going to be a really, really good reading year. And I am just so ready to dive into different worlds and meet new characters and find some more of my favorite books of all time. I do have one more video coming before the end of the year. I'm going to be doing my top 15 books of 2023. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel. And again, y'all, thank you for watching, and I will see y'all in my next one. Bye.